Hi, my name's Cole. Today, we're going to talk about surveying your students so that the data that they draw is about them. And that is one excellent way to make numbers and graphs meaningful for kids, is to make it about a topic that they care about, themselves. We'll focus on several aspects of surveying kids today: brainstorming questions, crafting response options, conducting the survey, and compiling the results. You've probably experienced this, but especially, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, kids haven't developed a filter yet. And they have so many amazing, curious questions. So let's tap into that and find out from them what the most interesting questions that they could answer would be. Here are some example questions. Where is the best place on the playground to make new friends? Where's your favorite spot in the classroom to read? Which book do you want to read next together as a class? What sport do you want to play next in PE? Which creature would you like to have as a classroom pet? Which of the following names should our classroom pet be given? Those are just a few. There are so many amazing and insightful questions that can be posed and answered by kids. It's basically no end on how creative you can be here. So a fun brainstorming activity would be to brainstorm a few of these in a group. Then you could have kids in small groups come up with another few questions, put all of those up on the whiteboard or somewhere that everyone can see, and then have them vote on their favorites and pick maybe the top 3 to put into your survey. And you may notice these questions have some things in common. They fall into a couple of groups, either things that would be useful to know or that would help kids get to know their peers better, or decisions to be made where the kids can collectively have input. So as you brainstorm questions, think about what other types of queries could fall into one or both of these categories. Once you've determined your questions, you need to come up with the response options. And for this, we need to spend a moment on Survey Design 101, where response options to multiple choice questions should be MECE, MECE. That stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Mutually exclusive means there's no overlap across the different response options. For example, if you ask kids, what activity do you do after school? And the response options included sports, playing outside, homework, going to the park, and practicing an instrument. You've not been mutually exclusive here because sports and playing at the park are both outside. So there are bits of each of these 3 that might be the quote unquote right answer, which is confusing. So in that case, you might need to differentiate between things that are inside versus outside, or approach that in a more specific way. Collectively exhaustive means that you've covered all responses that are relevant for the group. As a counterexample here, if you ask kids, how do you most often get to school? And the response options are bus, car, or walk, then the kid who rides his bike to school doesn't have the option that's right for them. So in that case, you either want to make sure that you have all of the options there that cover everyone, or you could consider having an other category. So again, that's mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Honestly, though, the survey probably doesn't have to be perfect. More important is going to be that you make it something meaningful for the kids, and do your best to come up with options that are going to be workable and meaningful for them as well. Once you've identified the questions you want to ask and the response options for each, you need to actually make the survey. When it comes to surveying kids, we want to think about both the how and who. On the how side, you can go low tech, simply print the questions and the response options and pass them out and have your students fill them out and hand them back in. Or you can get some tech involved and use Google Forms or something similar. You also want to think about who you're going to survey. Is this something that makes sense to do for your class, for the grade? You could even think about partnering with teachers in other grades, which would give you another dimension to analyze when it comes to the data coming back. You could see how things break down overall and then assess whether and what differences there are by grade. When it comes to the number of kids, if your survey questions are going to have 3 or 4 or 5 response options, you really need at least a dozen or so kids, ideally more than that, 20 or 30. But there's really no cap. You could have a lot of kids do this and see what you can learn. Once the survey has been given and completed, it's time to compile the results. You could consider having your students help with this piece as well. They can count and add, categorize. When it comes to actually showing the results, you can simply list the questions and the number of kids that chose each option. You might consider, if your students are already learning about percentages, to also turn the numbers into percentages. Then you open up some additional ways that those responses could be drawn. For an activity guiding kids to draw data using the output, check out the video Graphing with Survey Data. Also, check out all of the fantastic related resources at daphnedrawsdata.com. There you'll find activities for kids, support for parents, and resources for teachers. When it comes to our educator resources, you can join our educator community to stay up to date on new resources, gain access to special events, and more. We also have an educator guide you can download that has alignment to Common Core standards, discussion questions, activities, graph glossary downloads, and a growing library of videos for use in the classroom. Thanks for your help teaching kids the superpower of graphs.